Hello, I'm Jonathan Bowman-Perks, and welcome back to my favorite time of the week. And I'm delighted to have Jim Brigden on this series. Jim was recommended as an inspiring leader by Paul Cooper, and Paul helped Jim sell 4 businesses. So clearly hugely successful. Currently an executive director at Brainlabs, which has about 400 people in the UK and the US. And his specialism has been in the search advertising industry. And he has the reputation and the respect for 20 years in the search engine advertising industry. So probably one of the longest serving people outside the USA here in the UK. Yahoo acquired a search engine that he had set up, went from 3 people to 600 by the time he did that. So Jim, welcome. Great to have you on the series.
Thank you, Jonathan. I should say that the search engine that Yahoo acquired, it was an American company that I launched in the US, and it was up and running, and it was already a NASDAQ quoted company. So
fantastic.
So it was up and running. I can't claim that success.
Okay, but you've achieved an awful lot already in a short space of time.
Thank you.
And I found it very interesting in our conversations, Jim, about how you began life and how that's given you a perspective on the UK and abroad. Do you want to just share in a little nutshell a bit about how you began in life and why you appreciate what you've got now in life and where you
Yeah, sure. I'm a North London boy. I was brought up in St Albans, and I was in a very nice estate, a nice primary school up to the age of 11. And then we, as a family, we went to Singapore, where we did 3 years at an international school in Singapore with kids from all around the world in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was a great experience, really great friends, family, education. And then came back to the UK, where I spent a bit of time at a public school in Hertfordshire, two terms until I left, where I went to local comp in St Albans. And so it gave me a good perspective on internationalism and I suppose the class system in the UK and how it operated. And after some time in university in London, I went to America for 3 years. So I've been very privileged. I've lived in 3 of the world's great cities, in Singapore, London, and New York. And I've kind of, I like to think, moved through kind of different countries and different industries over the years, which have given me a good perspective and good empathy on how the world fits together. And I really love that.
That's grand. And Jim, just perhaps talk to us about your career journey to where you are now, some of the different organizations that you've worked with and what you learned en route, because of course everybody's interested in listening a bit about the context of it, but to take away the learning and perhaps your advice to others from what you learned in the different jobs you did and how you made your way.
We've only got an hour and a half, Jonathan. I mean, I've worked at a lot of different countries, and there's a lot of things I could hand through. I started out after I graduated in media sales, selling magazine space. I quickly realised I didn't want to be in that industry for very long, and I went into the photography industry, which was brilliant exposure to me because it wasn't that commercial, and I was quite commercial, and that allowed me to move to New York, where I was working in the creative industry in a foreign city, having the time of my life. And then I moved back into the UK just as the internet was kind of taking off. I had a brief stint at British Airways at their Air Miles division. So I covered media sales, creativity, technology within the British Airways infrastructure, all very different skills that allowed me to move into the internet when it was kicking off, do a .com startup where I did a year kind of helping a business grow before I joined a search engine myself. And just to kind of finish the career journey off, I did 4 years with the search engine Overture before Yahoo bought it, and then set up a search marketing agency called The Search Works with some other very bright people. That business grew and was acquired by a Swedish company in 2007. And then I set up another business with a couple of good friends called I Spy Search Advertising, Social Advertising and Analytics, which was acquired by Dentsu Aegis, and I did an earn out there. And now I'm at Brainlabs as an executive director there. So what have I learned over my career is, all the places I've been have been pretty much fast growth. where I've been working with teams to grow kind of new propositions and new products. What have I learned? I've learned to work hard, surround myself by smart people, work hard, be nice to people, treat people how I'd like to be treated myself, and kind of deliver success. I've always been very motivated by winning.
Yeah,
so much I've learned over the years. I mean, I'm 52. I try and learn something new every day. Always stretch yourself.
yeah, and we were talking earlier, and you've shared some of the tips and advice, but gaining the wisdom, often we gain it from, certainly I gain it from all the mistakes that I make. You either succeed or you learn something, but you also learn something when you succeed. Knowing what you know now, if you met your younger self, as well as giving the wisdom about surround yourself with, army of giants, and, be nice to people and work hard. Any other tips you'd give to the young Jim Brigden who's starting out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I was in my early 20s where I'd listen to a boring old git like myself. But assuming I did listen to myself, I'd probably say have a bit more confidence in your own abilities and take a few more risks, because you've definitely been in the right place at the right time. And I'm really proud of what I've achieved over my career, but sometimes I think, could I have achieved a bit more if I'd taken a few more risks and been a bit more confident in my own ability? I think that's what I'd try and pass on to a younger self.
Yeah, great. And do you have had some, anybody having a successful business which they sell and then exit from, doing it once, great, could be lucky. But you've done it 4 times. That's a remarkable achievement. So tell us a bit more, if that might include that, of some of your proudest moments in your career and your life, and also maybe darker moments, and what you learnt from both the proud moments and the dark moments.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I sold a business, the Searchworks, we had a really good exit with a really good business. At the time, we were 150-ish people. We had a really strong agency business in the UK. We had a fantastic client list. We had small sales offices in Germany and France and Japan. I was really proud, because it's difficult to open a business up in Japan, and we did that successfully, and it had a lot of value when we were acquired. And I'd done a lot of that work with a small team, and so we sold the business at a really good valuation. And that feeling of achievement, it was a real adrenaline run. 3 short years, we'd grown the business from pretty much a startup to 150 million in billings and 12 million in revenue, 6 million profit. It was rocket growth, and we had great clients and a great team. And when we sold it, although it was a real high for me that we'd got a great exit price, and it was well valued, it was also a bit bittersweet, because somebody else bought it and took the business, and I don't think they saw a lot of value themselves in the long term from it. But it was a great business. And I got a real sense of adrenaline rush from doing that, and a real weight off my shoulders, because I'd made some money for the first time in my life, and I don't come from a background of money, and I hadn't made money, and I'd done it with a great team. But I was key to that, and I was really, really proud of that. And you kind of talked about transitions. When I was kind of thinking what to do next, I really wanted to prove to myself that it wasn't luck, that I could do it again. And I started I Spy with Chris Whitelaw and Nick Jones. It was a small business when I joined them. That was a great business that we grew, and a really good team and a really good set of clients. And again, we had a really good exit there. And that second time round feeling, the fact that it wasn't just the first time, wasn't just luck. Maybe I did have some talent and could get a good team around me twice, and could grow a good business with a good culture and a good set of values, and get a good shareholder exit. That for me was what was I Spy or Searchworks more satisfying? Actually, the fact that I did both of them, really, really good feeling.
Yeah. And what about the dark side? And what did you learn from the tougher times in your personal life or your work?
Yeah, well, I mean, I mean, obviously everybody has tough times at home. Now, I've been married for 20 years. It's not always been easy, but I've got a really good marriage. But I think I'd rather talk about work lessons, I guess. One of the things that hasn't gone so well in the last few years, I was a investor in another business where I almost probably got a bit too thinking I had the Midas touch, that after 4 good exits, that everything that I was going to touch turned to gold, and I convinced quite a lot of people to invest in a business that it hasn't really quite worked out for a load of different reasons. And the proposition's pretty good, I think. The technology pretty good. We've never really got the team super firing, and we've still got the patient's alive. It's breathing. It's stopped bleeding, and maybe we'll get through it. But that's been pretty hard at times for me and for the rest of the management team, that it hasn't quite got to some brilliant performance, because frankly I think it should.
Yeah, and you touched on a really good point, and I think with virtual teams trying to survive and thrive, if there's not psychological safety and trust within the team, it just will never happen, because there's that lovely simple equation: trust equals speed times cost. Where trust is high, things happen quickly and it's not expensive. But where trust is low and there's no psychological safety, there's no innovation, there's no creativity, and everything takes so damn long, with lots of checking with each other and water cooler conversation or separate Zoom conversations after Zoom conversations. And you often have to get legal involved or fire people, and then they counter sue and things. So what's your experience? Does that make sense?
Well, I think that absolutely resonates, how you're just describing it there. And we've taken quite a lot of radical steps. We've changed the CEO. We've got a new CEO in the business and a new chair. And actually, as time goes on with that business, the trust is coming back and it's starting to come there. But it's been a painful experience. And I think, all of us have gone through a journey in that business, and hopefully it comes through the other side. But yeah, I think your equation's a good one. I'll learn from that. As I said earlier, I try and learn every day. And that's a good calculation.
Yeah, it's from the books Stephen Covey Jr., The Speed of Trust. You probably don't need the rest of the book. That is the essence of it. Quick fire questions: healthy, wealthy, and wise. What would be your tips on what's helped you, the habits you have to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, Jim?
Well, the healthy thing is really important. I saw Paul Cooper last week talking about his health lessons that he'd learned, and I went through a similar journey. A few years ago, I was definitely overweight and not in great shape, and I've got into a real habit of going to the personal trainer a couple of times a week, who abuses me terribly, but I find it really motivating. I find I'm more successful as a business person, and as a father and a dad, by being fitter and healthier. It gives me lots of positive energy. So regular exercise is brilliant, and I love being a personal trainer, and I love golf, and I love tennis, and I love playing football. So all those things give me good exercise, but getting the habit of it, I think, is really key. Don't do a burst and then come back to it so do it regularly and eat well.
Yeah, very, very much agree with you. And this morning for me was yoga. This was yesterday, because I was very stiff because the personal trainer was beasting my wife and myself in our garage gym, where we've got most of the equipment. But I was so stiff that yoga and stretching is also excellent exercise.
Yeah.
Great. So that was healthy. What about a bit of wisdom on money and wealthy? As you say, you came with no money, but now you've made some money for yourself. What's your advice on money?
Yeah, well, I think having a good financial advisor that you really trust, and I've known my financial advisor. I've had two over the last 30 years. Both of them I count as friends that I really trust, and I've got a good balanced portfolio. And I say my advice is manage it regularly and really get into the detail of it and really check it through. So have somebody you trust, be on it, and at the end of my life, I don't think I'll look back and think about possessions. So I'm trying to make sure that I've got enough money to give my kids enough of a leg up. That's what motivates me about money. It isn't about, I don't want to hang around on a yacht with Jay-Z and Beyonce. That doesn't motivate me at all. And in fact, I haven't got enough money to do that. But having enough money to give you options and enough money to say, no, I don't want to do that, is a great liberating feeling. So make sure you've got enough money to say no.
And you talk about your children, and I just wondered, are your folks still alive, or have they passed on? And what bit of wisdom would you've got from your parents, perhaps, that you'd pass on to your kids? And how so old are the kids now? Just give me an idea.
My kids are 19, 16 and 13. And my parents are very much alive, and they're thriving. They're both in their 70s. They're both good sports people. In fact, actually, my mum's not that great a sports person, because I beat her 8 and 7 last week playing golf. So she's if she watches this, she's definitely got to practice a bit more, because she's not the player she was. So obviously the competitive instinct comes from my mum. And I love playing competitive sports. My dad's probably taught me how to be a good loser, because he's, although he's a good sports person, he wasn't as competitive as my mum is. So I think my love of sport and the competition comes from both of them.
I love that. I love that.
And the ambition as well. So I kind of touched on class. My parents are both what people perceive as working class, that have progressed through the full employment welfare state and social mobility of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they've become more successful. And I love the concept of social mobility and meritocracy, and they're both very ambitious people.
Well, that resonates strongly with me. So I'm a supporter of my wife's charity, the Inspiring Leadership Trust, which is about social mobility, taking particularly vulnerable girls, but boys as well, 16 to 25 particularly, who've been in some pretty grim situations, often with abuse, modern day slavery, trafficking, but just abuse, and giving the very underprivileged some opportunities to meet some privileged people and help them step up the social divide and play to their skills and talents and believing in themselves, often widening out their viewpoints. So that resonates strongly with what you believe in, and this is a great inspiration to other people listening.
I strongly believe that we should create a society where everybody gets the chance to thrive and succeed. And I think Britain post-war 50s, 60s, the social mobility that was introduced and the prosperity that was shared amongst the population, I think that's what we should be aspiring towards. And it very much worries me, some of the trends that you see in society at the moment, where there's a polarization between rich and poor, and that, for me, that is really important. That we don't go the direction we're traveling in.
And it's leaders like you that can make a real difference and help charities like ours and others that are doing this work for social mobility. So thank you for that. We were talking about inspiring leadership and teams. I'll go straight on to who you would recommend as a good young inspiring leader. And again, we talk about diversity. We've had a whole range of different people, different walks of life. But you're focusing in, when we were discussing, on the leaders of tomorrow. And who would you think would be 2 inspiring leaders you found as part of these leaders tomorrow that you think should be on the series and share what they've learned as an inspiration to others who are listening?
Yeah, well, there's actually, on an ad, I'll make it 3, because while we've been talking, I thought of somebody else. So Dan Gilbert at Brainlabs is the CEO of the business there. Dan's super bright, super intelligent, very driven, and he started the business in a pretty commoditized space. And over the last 5-6 years, it's really grown into a powerhouse. Brainlabs is one of Google's and Facebook's up and coming scale up businesses. They're with a great reputation. Dan's a superb leader. And the other 2 people I was thinking about are people that are kind of going through a journey. I'm a big fan of a chap called James Connolly of Fetch, who set up a mobile advertising business that he scaled and grew and sold into dead too aegis. Again, you know, starting a business up and growing it, I've got massive admiration for any entrepreneur that can start something, grow it. And the other chap's a guy called Aaron Shepherd, who's doing a business called Goats, which is a social agency. Again, you know, founded it, grown it. Anybody that takes the risk to set up a business when they're young and really goes for it and turns into something good, I'm a massive supporter, and I'm a massive supporter of those three people I've just mentioned.
Well, no, thank you for that. And you know, afterwards you and I'll get them on the series, because we need to hear from people like this to inspire others. Because I think the country, again, back to this social mobility, we can lift people up, certainly in the tech space. I think this country can become really great. We're currently going through, it's on the news everywhere, the global pandemic, which may last us a long time to come. But what's been the impact of COVID for you personally and for the organizations like Brainlabs that you've been supporting?
Yeah, well, I try and take the positive from every situation. And, you know, I'm pretty lucky. I live in a nice house in London. I've got a nice garden. I've got a lovely family that I spend lots of time with. So actually I found, and I could spend lots of time with the dog and doing sport and fitness. COVID was good for our family. You know, we spent loads of quality time together, you know, having a proper meal every evening and talking about things and working on projects in the house. You know, I loved all that. That was good. Obviously it's not going to be good for Britain in the long term, or the world in the long term. We're kind of going through that journey of discovery about what it's going to be like when we get through to the other side, if we do get through to the other side. But it's been a fascinating journey that I've tried to take the positives around the family life, and I think we've benefited in many ways. When it comes to business, and I'll talk mainly about Brainlabs here, we had when COVID first hit, it was pretty scary, because we work with lots of clients in the travel space. So people like TUI and Expedia, PitchUp and All Clear Travel Insurance and London Theatre Tickets Direct, and they all stopped investing in media and advertising because their industry's crunched. So we had a pretty stark drop in our fees, and we had to take full advantage of all the government schemes, which I think they did a pretty good job on. You know, the furlough schemes and the kind of bounce back schemes and all the other type of business incentives, and we took advantage of that, managed the cost base, kind of got a good cash flow handle on what was going on in the business. And then I think we all started to realize we had clients that were benefiting because of COVID, and we were finding winners as well as losers in our portfolio. And clients that were in the home improvement space or the DIY space or content online, they all started investing more, and our business has been really recovering. So, you know, Brainlabs has gone through it. I found the whole experience kind of exhilarating in a way, you know, having to have lots of conversations with our clients and with our teams and work as part of a project to manage the business through the crisis. And, you know, it was a real learning thing. And sometimes when you get old and you be a bit of an old has-been or whatever, you kind of you need new things and new challenges. And I really enjoyed that kind of COVID crisis and how it brought the team and society together and focused this on the project about how do we get through it to the other side.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's obviously loads of bad things. Personally, I quite enjoyed the crisis and what it did for the business and the team. And now we're coming through it. I think we've got a long way to go, though, because, you know, I talked to the team at Brainlabs lots, and you know, I've had every spectrum from people thinking that working from home and not having to commute is brilliant, and actually I can do really interesting stuff, coding or building stuff that I don't have to interface with other people. They think it's great. But then I've had other team members, you know, sitting at home crying, saying this is awful. You know, the reason I work at an agency is so I can work as part of a team and get ideas and energy. So you have a massive spectrum from people that love it through to absolutely loathe it, and trying to work through how we're going to reimagine the business so it becomes an exciting, vibrant place to work. That's a big challenge for us, and it's something I'm excited about.
Yeah, and that fits with what I'm hearing from other leaders, Jim. And what's your, again, it has to be a prediction. No one knows the future. But how do you think it's going to be for leaders now and in the future? What's the world of work going to be like? And if you were a sort of betting man, where do you see it going in the next few years? Because all the indicators are, even if we do get a vaccine, some of the scientists are saying that won't be until 2022, 2023 that it's on general release. People are imagining it before then, and even then, the world won't suddenly go back to how it was. It never will go back. It'll always be different. What's your anticipation of what the world will be like for leaders and their teams?
I think all good leaders have always got a clear vision and a kind of strategy and a plan that they can communicate to their teams. So that sense of purpose. This is where we're going, why we're going there, and what we're going to do along the way of going there. And that's what we need is good leaders in business and industry. I have no idea how long this is going to go on for. All I know is that previous pandemics have ended in the past, and let's assume that's going to happen. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I think we're going to see some pretty big changes. I think the positive changes. I think we all like the environmental impact. Less traffic, seeing birds, and stuff. And we need to be a greener planet. There's no doubt about that. So let's hope we can start adopting some greener behaviours and less environmentally damaging behaviours. I'd love to see that as a change. Yeah. I'd also love to people to be able to spend more time with their family, and friends, and maybe we don't all need to be working in urban cities. Maybe we can disperse work into more rural areas and share some of the wealth around the UK. Maybe that's going to be a positive upside. We can plan it. The infrastructure's there. That could be good. Yeah, the changes I'd like to see.
Yeah, and this is one crisis of many that we'll get in the future, and we've had many in the past. If you had a couple of top tips for people who are in the middle of handling huge change and a crisis, just like you've been advising and helping the Brainlabs team, what a couple of tips would you give people for leading in a crisis and during change?
I really was impressed by the way the Brainlabs team quantified the size of the crisis. What actually was the impact on their business? What was happening to the cash? Let's communicate clearly to our clients and team what is going on with our business and what we're going to do about it as a result. But it was that kind of fact-finding exercise that we went through, first of all, very quickly, that allowed us to get our hands around the size of the problem. And we reacted to it. And I was really encouraged by all the conversations we had with our clients. And sometimes an agency client conversation isn't always completely transparent. I really felt that the great majority of our clients really understood the severity of the situation and communicated clearly with us about what was going on with their businesses and therefore what it meant to us. And I think our partnerships got stronger because of that. So I think, the tip I'd give about when you're dealing with a crisis is quantify the size of the crisis and what the impact is, and then work out what you're going to do about it with a clear plan, clear strategy, and get your team behind that. Because I think teams want clear leadership. They want to know where they're going and why they're going there, and what's in it for them.
Yeah. Time and again, this message comes up. In fact, I was doing a masterclass the other day with a whole load of CFOs and FDs, and the big theme that I picked up is about a clear sense of purpose and giving meaning and purpose to the people, why they're doing what they're doing, and how you, as a leader, you're a meaning maker. You've got to make meaning from things. You've got to be a storyteller, put emotion into the facts. So that why do they come to work? Just to make money for the boss? That isn't going to get them to coming to work. So a clear sense of purpose is very true. That really resonates what you've just said. And on the opposite side of good leadership, Jim, during this time and other crises you've been involved in, what kind of mistakes do you see managers and leaders making? What I'd call the misleaders, the expiring leaders. What kind of errors could people avoid making that you've seen them make?
That's quite difficult. So because I've worked in my own companies where I'm one of the leaders in the business for the last 20, 30 years now. So it's been a long time since I've been working within other companies. And those companies were fine as well. What I really hate is the bullshit artists that are in it for themselves. The way you just don't believe any of the promises they make to the industry or the teams. And, you know, I like to think that the bullshit artists get found out in the long run. But they're the type of people that, you know, you're making false promise after false promises to your shareholders, to your team, to your clients, and just always getting wrong.
You make me smile. I was listening to stand-up comedy with my wife last night, and one of the comedians, I think it was in Bristol, and he was saying the internet, it's really ruined life for the bullshitters. He said, because I grew up with, you know, Lance, and Lance told me, having been to the waxworks in London, Madame Tussauds, and taking pictures with his mum and dad, that this was at a barbecue his mum and dad had in the garden. And he met Nelson Mandela and, you know, George Formby. Yeah, they came along. And of course, he couldn't check on that. And he oh, right, okay. But nowadays, people say something that's complete bullshit in a pub, and someone's nearby going,
yeah, that's so true.
And go, that's bollocks. That doesn't work at all. You know, here's a picture. You're not there.
Yeah, but you're assuming you're assuming that everything on the internet is true, though. You know,
it's true. Oh God, yes. What do you reckon to this whole thing about fake news? And I think Trump has had a lot to do with damning any opposition must be fake news, and his stuff must be true. I think Edelman with Chuka Umunna, who was on this series, and he is involved in ESG investments for Edelman. So very much along the lines of the environment you've been talking around. They did a survey about the trust index, and they said, if you're a Republican, you don't trust all the news, big newspapers and the news media that Trump hates. And if you're a Democrat, you don't trust government. And the level of trust on both sides has gone down to all-time low. But you've been working in the sort of search engine optimization. What would you realistically warn us about out there about what is fake and what is real, and how do you sort of make sense of the truth?
Yeah, that's a really good big question. The search engine side of stuff, I think let's push that to one side, because I think the search engines, if they're not relevant and true, they stop existing. So the search engines, what you find in the search engines, by and large, should be pretty accurate. Otherwise, people stop using them, and because they're reference points. On the search engines, the social media platforms, I think have got a big challenge ahead of themselves, because it's very possible to reach huge volumes of people on social platforms very quickly, because there's, I don't know, 2 or 3 billion people every day accessing social media platforms through their smartphones or on the internet. And you can target those people very precisely and very accurately into quite small numbers. So if you're so inclined, you can spread bad information around to a targeted group of people. And I've got no doubt that in the last couple of elections, we have had bad players destabilizing our country and in every other country with bad information, because they want to destabilize Western democracies. What I would say is the social platforms themselves are very aware of this and are desperately trying to stop that happening and looking at their policies. And I really hope they get it right, because they can't turn around to people and say, you know, people aren't impacted by what they see on our platforms. Otherwise, their advertising messages are dead, because people advertise on those platforms every day trying to influence people's behavior. And it's effective. You know, I can take an advertiser's budget and spend it on Facebook or TikTok or whoever, and people's behavior changes as a result of that advertising budget. And Facebook and TikTok and all the others need to believe that's true, and they do know it's true. So they've got a duty to act properly and control what is published on their platforms. Otherwise, they're dead, because the governments will shut them down.
And it's a whole nother topic, but a fascinating one, about the human psychology of how you're influenced. And there was a very good Netflix program about the dark side the whole social media, which I can't remember the name of it, but it was
Yeah.
really fascinating about how human psychologists understand how to get us hooked and addicted
Yeah.
to social media when we should be stopping. And I was trained by an interesting guy, Brian Johnson, on a coaching program in California. And one of the series you talked about is digital detox and digital minimalism, and when you switch off and when you're not on the platforms. Whole interesting thing. Final couple of questions, Jim. The first one would be, what would you like your legacy to be of all these different things that you've done? What would you like your legacy to be, both for your family and for your work? And then finally, what would be a book you'd recommend?
Well, legacy. I mean, I'm really glad you started with family. I'd like to be known as a good husband and a good father and a good friend. I'd like to be known as a good sportsman and a nice bloke and somebody that is good to hang out with. So that's what I'd like to be known for. I don't want to have a blue plaque or a statue or anything like that. Business wise, I'd like to. I really enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy helping build good teams and good companies. And I'm on a bit of a journey now, because I'm less of an executive and more of a mental coach guider than a doer. And that's not an easy journey to go through. But I'd like to be successful at that and help businesses be successful in the eyes of their clients, their team, their shareholders. And I like making a bit of money. I'd like my kids to benefit from that. And then that's kind of legacy for me.
Yeah, that's good. And the book?
Well, I'm a big reader, and I love reading books, and I'm reading a great book at the moment. So I'm 52, and my granddad died in 1979, when I was about 11. And he was a really interesting bloke, and he talked a lot about his war experience, luckily. And I was fascinated by it, but I was fascinated in the eyes of an 11-year-old boy. It sounded like guns and boats and planes and all the excitement and none of the downside. And I'd kind of tucked it away until I was talking to my dad the other week, when I saw the Tom Hanks film, Greyhound, and it's about, it's got some British destroyers in it, and one of those was my granddad's boat. And I said, my granddad's boat was mentioned in that film, and my dad went, well, I'm not surprised. It's C.S. Forester, and C.S. Forester wrote a book called...
He's Hornblower, isn't he?
He's Hornblower, yeah, he does all the naval books.
Yeah. And
he wrote Greyhound, which the Good Shepherd, which is Greyhound, is based upon. And he said, Grandad served on the Maltese convoys, and there's a book called The Ship, which is about that convoy going to relieve the siege of Malta. And it's C.S. Forester served on your granddad's boat, and Grandad is one of the people in the book, fictionalized. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And it's a great book, and it's got some great stuff about leadership, about how the captain commands his boat and knows all about everything, but at a very top level, but his team get the detail right, and so he sets the course, the strategy. It's a brilliant book, and my granddad's in it, so I recommend that entirely. The Ship by C.S. Forester.
I will read it.
I'm halfway through at the moment. I don't know what's going to happen at the end, but I know he survives.
Well, no, thank you. And Jim Brigden, thank you very much for being on the Inspiring Leadership series. Really found it invaluable, and I know the audience would have enjoyed it too. So thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you. I enjoyed it.